Okay, here we are, Carolina. You want to hear something really funny? I just gave about a 6 minute critique on your work, and I looked down and I realized I wasn't recording. So, so let's go. Let's do this again. Okay, now let me see if I can recreate what I've said. So we started here. I decided to create an account for my Artists Unite, and I'm just looking down here to make sure my camera is rolling. Okay, and we're good to go. So I wanted to challenge myself with an illustrating hands into curvature tool. Excellent. That's fantastic, Carolina. That's fantastic because you're taking what you're learning and applying it to what you're doing. That's outstanding. So what that is showing me is that you're stepping outside your comfort zone, and that's how we learn. Excellent. Keep that up. Keep that formula up as we move through the class. There's plenty of, as you know, through the first 2 weeks, there's plenty of resources to keep you guys busy and to keep you learning. So just keep trying new resources, keep applying new resources, and again, that's how we learn. So I was really, really pleased to see that. Now, speaking of the curve tool, if we jump over right here, and I'm just over here in week 1 presentation 2, creating shapes. I don't know if you remember this from last week, but if you didn't get a chance to take a look, these are videos, by the way. These are tutorials, and the working files are right here. So you can right click and download that and work along with the video with this file. This is another one. There's no video associated here, but this is a great one for working with your pen tool. But what I want to get to is this right down here. This is a dedicated tutorial for the curvature tool. And I've included the AI file here for the guitar. So you can just open that up and work right along with this video to develop your curve tool practice, to practice your curve tool and develop your curve tool techniques. Curve tool is an amazing tool, and one that veteran designers like myself were really, really glad to see this added to the toolkit in Illustrator. Otherwise, this would have had to been drawn out by pen tool, which is fine. But boy, the curve tool is just it's so wonderful. It's intuitive and it's accurate, as you can see right here. I chose the guitar because of these gorgeous curves in the guitar, right? So what I've done here is, as you can see right here, is I've just used the curve tool, a couple of clicks, and we've almost duplicated, identical duplication of that shape. So I just want to make sure that's there for you. That's right there for you, so you can definitely take a look at that. Where was I? Back to the writing. Okay, the process was challenging. I learned to control the curve tool better than before. Excellent. I would like to hear the feedback from you guys to see what I can improve. It's challenging to illustrate paintbrushes. All right, we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and jump over to the work. Now, I've got the work open in the PDF because I want to do a demonstration. I think it's going to make a lot of sense to you. So we take a look at the piece, and I think the piece is good. Conceptually, I think it's really great. You've got these. This kind of rings a little homage to Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel, painted in 1590 at the Vatican ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, right? And I think that kind of reminded me of that as soon as I looked at it. I'm going to tell you something. I think that if you were to take that, you know what I'm talking about, the Michelangelo painting, right? Sistine Chapel. And we've seen this configuration right here of these two hands, kind of the way that they're configured, touching index finger. It's basically the creation of Adam. So this is a depiction of mankind, Adam, and this is a depiction of the heavens, God, and the angels above, right? 1508, this was painted, Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, right? We've all seen it, right? It's might be the most famous painting in the world. But this little configuration of this kind of touching the hand of God, boy, I think if we were to incorporate that right there, oh wow, the concept would just boom. Hear that crack? That's the home run. That's the sound of the home run. I'm thinking that if we can possibly duplicate that kind of configuration with the two hands touching, when you say Artists Unite, we're kind of paying homage to Michelangelo, this kind of symbiotic relationship of man with a superior being. And that's kind of the way a lot of artists, that's the way I look at art. I look at it as a connection with a superior being. And that's the way I look at art. It's very spiritual to me. So I think a lot of artists and designers will be able to identify with that, should you elect to do that. What that would entail is finding a close-up of this and really being able to zoom in there and get it to the point where you can duplicate that and use it. So that's one recommendation. Of course, that would entail losing these ribbons between the hands, or these color And you don't have to take my suggestion. I mean, if you want to continue in this vein, that's perfectly fine. I'll give you a couple of tips if you do elect to go this way. If you don't, if you elect to go that Sistine Chapel way, then we would have to place the 2019 somewhere else and kind of rethink this area right here. But I think it would be great practice to practice that kind of anatomical configuration of hands. Which to me, as an artist, I always thought drawing hands was the most difficult of any anatomical appendage. I think drawing hands is extremely difficult, and to me, it has to do with shading accurately. So, okay, now the poster itself, one thing I want to do is I want you to think about this, okay? Whenever we design, and as a designer moving forward, I want to move that because it's a little distracting. Okay, as a designer moving forward from this point on, I want you to start thinking about this. Every time you work on a project, think about where that project's going to be viewed. Where is that project supposed to be viewed, all right? So this, for example, this is a poster. So what do we know? We know that it's likely to be viewed at a distance, okay? We can use this information to do some testing. This is 2019, right? As a designer, I test my work. It's relatively a new concept that's bringing design thinking into the arena, which is basically points to an iterative process where you create, you test, you collect data, and then you apply that data to the next iteration of the piece. And I think that is important at this point for designers to realize. Now, I do user testing in my design. Let me give you an example. I just recently finished a project where I did a logo for a fleet of, for the fleet of a company in Cleveland. And what we did is we looked at this logo and we sat down, we said, okay, where's this logo going to be viewed? Where is it? What's the main reasoning for this logo? And the main reasoning for my client expressed, the main reasoning was to adorn the fleet of trucks with a visual identifier for the company, right? So what does that tell me? That tells me that it's very important that the logos are used on the trucks, okay? I can use this to my advantage, this information to my advantage. So what did I do? I designed the logo. I printed the logo on a large format printer in color. The color's the final logo, right? Then I had my client bring one of the vans from his fleet over, and we mounted the logo on the side of the van, and we had the van drive by at 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, so we could see how that logo looks in movement, okay? And the reason I'm bringing this up is I just want to bring this to your attention as because I'm saying that at this point, from this point forward, when you work as a designer, keep in mind the end game. Where's the piece going to be used? So this is a poster, right? We know one thing about this already. It's going to be viewed from a distance. More likely, it's going to be viewed from a distance first before it's viewed up close up. The reason we say that is because typically we see a poster across the room. The poster has something to draw us in, which this one does, this area right here. This nice contrasty area right here draws us in, which brings us closer to the poster where then we can start looking at the poster. So that said, I know a long, really long-winded way to set this up, but what I want to do is I want to mimic the condition here of looking at this at a distance. And so here we are from across the room. Well, technically, here we are from across the room, right? And what do we see? We see this diagonal right here, but these are not recognizable as hands. And that could be problematic because what that's doing is that's not allowing your concept to be viewed at a distance, okay? So my recommendation here would be, in this particular piece, is to go back in and maybe increase the size of the hands and add, see that color of this, color of the type for the Artist Unite? Use that to stroke the hands. Okay, you add just the stroke of the hands, basically outline the hands, the fingernails, the little creases in the hands, etc., etc. That's going to allow these to be more recognizable as hands at a distance. Okay, so you can see at this distance right now, it just looks like some sort of a diagonal set of design elements, right? We don't see the hands. So by adding that stroke, we're increasing the likelihood that those hands are going to be viewed, recognizable at a distance. Okay, now my other recommendations are this. You talked about a stroke. I'm not real sure exactly. You're talking about where the ink comes off the type or off the brush onto the type. I think you're okay here. I wouldn't stroke this because I think you're going to have some legibility issues. And plus, you're going to have an issue of how do I transition the brushwork into the regular stroke for the typography without it looking unusual, artificial, and out of place, which points to uncomfortable visual tension, which we want to avoid. So I'm okay with those strokes. So what I would do as far as composition goes in the actual layout itself is we need to employ what's called proximity in here. Proximity dictates that anything that is placed close together has a relationship with one another. If we look at the inverse of that relationship, we can see that if we place things close together, they will have a relationship. Therefore, things that inherently have a relationship should be placed close together in a composition. I say that because the date and the time should be closer together, right? So what I would recommend in this particular composition is I would take this 5/1/19, this 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Balboa Park, and I would group those together. And I would take this meets local artists. So we have your Artists Unite, meet local artists. We'll move that up right here, right under the illustration. Okay, then we'll take the contact information and location. We'll group that together and place it down here. Maybe 5/19 here, or 5/1/19 here, 1 to 4 p.m. with the other typographic information here. It's important to note that you do use one of the required typefaces. Right here, I'm back here in week 1, project 1 poster begin stage, and we can see that we are required to use these for our typeface. You can use a sans serif in conjunction with a serif. These all mix together very well. And then you can use the decorative typeface for your headline, which you have right here. So don't forget, those typefaces there should be from this list right here. Okay, that's what I have. Sorry, I took almost 12 minutes. Didn't mean to do that, but I did want to be as thorough and complete as possible. All right, questions, comments, concerns, clarifications, or any of the above, please let me know and I'll be glad to provide in that regard. Definitely looking forward to seeing this one work through. So again, any questions at all, don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you very much.